Hello everyone and welcome to this episode, the Access to Learning one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. When we put the timetable together, we tend to have ideas about what the episodes might be. I knew what I thought this one might cover, but it wasn't what I expected. To help us get an understanding on this subject, we've got two really fascinating and knowledgeable guests. Our first guest is Natasha Gorman. Natasha is an HR professional with over a decade of experience in public sector learning and development, facilitation and coaching. Natasha has created groundbreaking social mobility projects, working in collaboration with the UK government and national pupil referral units. She has dedicated her professional and voluntary work to widening learning access, elevating and empowering those most in need. Our second guest is Angela Thurman. Angela holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, a Master of Science in Telecommunications Management, and is a certified project management professional. In late 2020, Angela launched Thurman Co., a technical project management consulting firm in Houston, Texas. Thurman Co. provides its clients with customized project management solutions. Angela is also a board member for the Texas chapter of Women in Manufacturing. Recorded in January of this year, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Natasha and Angela talking about access to learning.
Well, good day, Natasha. It's a pleasure to meet you. And can you tell me a little bit about where you are and how are you today?
Hi, Angela. It's great to meet you too. I'm really pleased to be here. I am in Edinburgh city centre, having just returned from a brisk lunchtime walk. It's January here, so it's bitterly cold outside. And I'm really interested to learn more about where you're from and why you're here on the podcast today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I am in Houston, Texas, and it's been cold for us, but that's not very, very cold at all. It's 42 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure exactly how that translates to Celsius, but it's well above freezing. We did just have a cold snap here, but I'm definitely counting my blessings that in the southern U.S. it's not that cold. I'm here for the podcast to talk about accessibility for learning, particularly for women, as that's a very important thing for me. I'm an electrical engineer and was only the fourth woman to graduate with an engineering degree of any kind from my university, which is a very small university in Arkansas, and have seen how that translated to career opportunities for me. And I'm very eager to mentor other women, particularly in STEM, which would be science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, career opportunities. So I definitely value my own education and the learning opportunities that I've had, whether they were formal or informal. So I'm just happy to have a conversation with you about the availability and accessibility of learning opportunities for all women.
Wonderful. That's great. It's such a pleasure to meet you. It really is. I guess I'm here for similar reasons, really. This podcast for me has been quite a while in the making, and I'm super excited to be part of it. As Andrew knows, I'm incredibly passionate about access to learning, and the reason why I'm here today is to talk about the barriers to learning for people from a particularly low area of deprivation, people who have been faced significant challenges in their early lives, and how that kind of translates to learning opportunities. I love to learn, which is why I'm in learning myself. I've worked in public sector leadership and management, equality, diversity and inclusion. My career's kind of been woven through my professional experiences in those kind of learning and development roles. and throughout my voluntary career as well, which has spanned over 20 years, all of which has been in learning environments, in alternative education provisions, and with young people who face significant challenges and setbacks in their life. So to have the opportunity to actually sort of bring that to light and kind of look at where we are with that and how we've moved on from my own experiences as being a person from an area of low deprivation and someone who wasn't able to access mainstream education from the age of 13, who hasn't been able to go to university, but who absolutely thrives on the opportunity to learn. It's interesting to look at how many inequalities there are, whether or not you want to learn. Having the luxury of being able to learn is something quite different. So I'm really pleased to be able to be invited onto the podcast today to talk about that in a little bit more depth with you, Angela.
I think that we are well matched for this conversation. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to meet and have this discussion. I also came from a background where it wasn't really expected that I would be able to go to university. My parents were not from a background that would have afforded me that ability if it were not for scholarships opportunities. So I worked very hard through my early education. I won a lot of scholarships, and that allowed me to be able to afford the education that I did have. And I'm very, very grateful for those opportunities. And also in the U.S., we also have grants and student loans. And so I came out of my university years with a lot of student debt. And I'm not sure if there's the same sort of thing in the UK, but of course there's a lot of conversation going on now about student debt in the US. President Biden has created a program to forgive student debt, and some people are, they're for that, and some people are against that, and for me, I'm not going to offer an opinion one way or the other. But it did create an opportunity for me, and it does for many, many students to be able to have an avenue to reach their dreams for a university education. But there are other types of learning opportunities besides just a formal university career path as well. And I'm very happy to see a resurgence in the U.S. for technical career choices as well. And those can be very rewarding as well. So we have a number of technical schools that offer training in all sorts of trades. And that's another avenue I'm happy to explore as well.
So, Angela, you just mentioned there about some alternative pathways in education, and that's something that I've been particularly interested in and have developed a learning and development program for young people who have actually been removed from mainstream education. That's something that I've been incredibly passionate about for over 10 years now. The reason for that was I myself was removed from mainstream education at the age of 13. So I had been bullied at school. As I said earlier, I'd grown up in an area of low deprivation, had been born to a teenage mother and had some significant setbacks in early life. And we'd moved into a new area and the bullying had started at school, and it got to a point where I was hospitalised. And at that stage, there was nothing really left that the education system could do. So I was out of education for over a year. And then I was fortunate enough to access a pupil referral unit, which is something in the UK that kind of captures young people who've been removed from education for a variety of different reasons. So that could be a behavioural issue, it could be a displaced refugee, a travelling family, children who have grown up in the care system, who are moving local authorities, a whole host of reasons really for why a young person is removed from mainstream education. So as I kind of forged a career for myself over the kind of subsequent 15 years since I'd been that age myself, I started to work with pupil referral units on a voluntary basis to look at how we can get real kind of learning opportunities and access to further education and employment as a young person who won't study the necessary qualifications that they need in order to be able to move on to college or university or into a job. So there's a significant barrier to learning in this country for young people who've had a really challenging start to life. And unfortunately, over the last 20 years, the barrier to learning has become even greater. I've done some research on that and looked at a Guardian article at the end of 2023, and it showed that pupil referral units in the UK are now at dangerous levels. Since the pandemic, young people have suffered significant anxiety. There's been an awful lot going on globally that young people have really had to kind of carry, seeing the parents, grandparents, families going through incredibly traumatic times, and that's obviously had impacts on young people. And when we see those young people kind of being moved from mainstream into alternative education provision, the life chances are significantly set back. For example, a young person in the UK can study 11 GCSEs that will then move you into college, university, and into employment. When you've moved out of mainstream education, your access to learning is limited to 2 qualifications at best, and your attainment levels are generally under 10% that you will actually achieve those qualifications. So in the last 12 months, I've been working with pupil referral units who have had no choice but to offer hybrid learning with no safety net to those young people actually completing that learning. So, for example, a school has had to have a double intake. That would mean that a young person has 2 hours a day education that they are relied upon to complete at home, and there's no one there at home to ensure that that education is actually completed. So their learning opportunities are drastically reduced at a key time in their life. So as I said, 10 years ago, I set up a programme for young people that were in pupil referral units to move into work experience and career development opportunities through the civil service. So that's in the UK government. And we bring young people in their final year of school into our civil service offices nationally, and we give them those work experience opportunities and learning opportunities within our offices over a 12-month period.
Well, Natasha, that is amazing to hear. And I can understand how it would impact not only the student, the pupil, but their entire social circle, including the family. And I would also imagine that it would have a positive impact on the work unit where they're assigned, because the energy and enthusiasm that young person is going to bring to the team would be very positive as well. I think that's fantastic. So congratulations to you for this insight and for developing this program. And with 10 years of data to analyze, and I'm a numbers data kind of girl, so I'm gonna rely on the data. I'm sure you've got a lot of data to support this program, and hopefully you've got government funding to continue to support your program.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly been the aspiration. And one thing that I did achieve in December 2020 was a change in government recruitment policy so that these young people could come into roles within government and wouldn't have to compete through the usual recruitment process of an application and interview, because, as I said earlier, often these young people have been through significant trauma in their life and haven't had the kind of social structure, family structure around them to be able to support them in an application or mentor them through an interview process. So for them, being able to stack up against a peer who has had access to that sort of really rich learning and the people around them that can mentor them through that process, without access to that, it makes an application into a government department extremely difficult.
And so do the female students particularly benefit from this program? I'm thinking in ways like with their confidence, and then once they're in the program, are they being mentored, and are they learning a variety of skills?
That's a really interesting question, actually, about the females. And what I have found, sadly, is that it seems to be a lot more challenging to really engage females in the work experience opportunities. Often that's because they seem to have a lot more responsibility at home, whether that be looking after their siblings, certainly with young people who have been through domestic violence, which is often the case. They feel that they're very protective over their mother or home situation. So with the young girls that have been involved in the programme, I've found it a lot more challenging, my role, to be able to support them into it. So, Angela, I've noticed that there is disparity between male and females there, and I'm really interested to know what your experience of that is.
That's a great question, Natasha. So I'm an engineer, and I began my engineering career in the late 80s, and at that time, the ratio of males to females was very marked, and even now, my career path has led through several different industries, whether it's manufacturing or telecommunications or aerospace. It has always been my experience that it was me with a bunch of different men, even to the point where I would go on a team building outing and I would be the sole female with 24 men. I was the single female in many of my engineering courses. I even had, at the week of graduation, I had one of my classmates ask me, why did you put yourself through all this, all the difficulty of the courses that we took, when you're just going to get married and have babies? And I thought, you're my friend and you don't get it. But I think that we're making inroads. But I know from my discussions with younger females in these industries and in engineering today that they still are struggling. I think that as we continue to engage more women in these career paths and promote the education, these fields of education for women, that it will become more recognized that these are career options for women, and it'll be more common to see women in those roles. And that's a day I'm looking forward to, when it won't be strange that Sally's an engineer and, Jane is a programmer. And, so I'm really looking forward to that and continue to promote that. I don't have children, but if I had a daughter, I would definitely promote her choices, whatever they were, whether it was engineering or education or being a CNC mill operator. It wouldn't matter. So I just wish that every little girl knew that she could make whatever choice she wants wherever her interests lie. And that's one of the things that I'm doing with my volunteer work with the Women in Manufacturing organization. So I'm the membership director and treasurer for the Texas chapter of Women in Manufacturing. I really enjoy that work. And one of the reasons why is because the organization has an educational foundation, creates educational programs for its members, not only for those with aspirations for management and leadership positions, but also for the women that are on the production floor, because often they can be overlooked, but they need career educational programs as well. And that was one of the reasons why I really resonated with this organization. And every member has access to monthly educational programs that are recorded and are available in a library and are accessible online asynchronously to every member 24 hours a day. And that just was like the icing on the cake for me. And with over 25,000 members,
Wow.
This was just something that really, really made a difference to me.
That's fantastic. Angela, we were chatting just before the podcast started about some of the British TV programs that you've watched, and I was thinking my guilty pleasure is Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and there's a reason why. You're probably not going to like that, but there's a reason why I wanted to kind of bring that up on this podcast, because I think it's like a perfect example of what can be achieved by a woman. Like her or not, Kim Kardashian has really achieved an incredible amount in her lifetime. And I was watching an episode last week, and I actually thought about Andrew whilst I was watching the episode. And I thought, I'm going to bring this one up on the podcast. You know, Kim Kardashian, she's a model. She is a lawyer. She's an actress. She's dabbled in singing, and she's also dabbled in comedy. But for all of those roles that she's kind of pursued herself as something that she's felt passionate about in that moment, she's had the best of the best learning opportunities, and she's been resourced to be able to do that. You know, she's been able to hire acting and singing coaches. She's been able to hire a lawyer mentor that can travel around the world with her 24/7 to ensure that she, you know, is successful in those exams that she's taken. And she has been incredibly successful. And as a mother of 4 children, a single mother of 4 children, she's achieved an enormous amount, but she's been incredibly well resourced to do that and has had the capacity to do that. And I remember in a conversation that I had with Andrew possibly 18 months ago now, I'd asked him for some help with a presentation I was giving at work. And that was to engage women in tax, in additional learning outside of the mandatory tax learning. And one of the things that Andrew said to me was having the capacity to learn. And I really thought about that as a female. You know, I'm just generalizing, but I'm a mother of 3 sons. I work full time, and I have a huge passion for learning. It's obviously my career and my voluntary work. But the time in the margins between that for me to actually achieve the learning that I would like to achieve has been incredibly difficult. And it's interesting, you know, where do women have that opportunity to kind of squeeze things into the margins and really sort of immerse themselves in these learning experiences and even, I dare say, enjoy those learning experiences that can progress their careers when we're doing an awful lot of other stuff around that as well. So I was interested to kind of get your view on having that capacity to learn as a woman with no doubt a very full career and life and voluntary work. Where do you get that capacity to learn?
Oh, I am an avid lifelong learner. I just can't stop myself. And I thank you. I thank you for bringing this up. So I am blessed that my mother recognized early on that I was an inquisitive, precocious child. As an example, I was like probably 3 years old and I had done something that I wasn't supposed to do. And my mother says, "How many times have I told you not to do such and such?" And I looked at her and said, "Not enough." So my mother purchased for me that Hooked on Phonics training program. And, back in that day, they were on LP records. So I had all the little books and the records. And I actually learned to read when I was 4 or 5 years old. So before I started kindergarten. And that was a great asset to me because I love to read. And that is one of the ways that it's a sort of self-care for me. I learn through reading. That's one of the ways that I learn. I think that some women, that may be how they fit learning into their daily life. But today, I think that many women probably would get access to training and learning through internet courses, probably. And whether that's work-related or just on their own, there's so much available. There's so much content available now, and much of it for free, that we could learn anything and everything online. YouTube is fantastic for this. But I actually had a project for a client that is a German software company. And one of their goals was to make their free training material available. And they had a directive to reach communities that were underserved in Africa. And I thought, what a great mission, because it was not entirely altruistic, because they did want people to use their software, which, by the way, is open source software, meaning it's free. But they wanted to develop technical capabilities in these underserved, especially from a technology perspective, these communities in Africa. And I just really admire them for that, because they weren't targeting their fellow European markets, where they could make a lot of money, or the U.S. market, or even the Northern American market. They weren't targeting India. They weren't targeting, Asia. They were really more employing the ESG values that they proclaimed to honor. And I thought that was very important. And I really admire them for that. By making this training content available online for free, they were giving people tools to make a living. And they were the kind of transferable skills that once you learned this content, you could apply it in many, many different ways. You can give a man a fish, or you can teach him to fish himself, kind of methodology, I guess.
I think it's really interesting and very timely for me that we talk about the access to learning online, free learning. There is an abundance of learning online. There's almost so much learning that you don't really even know where to start. Unfortunately for me at the moment, I'm between roles in a very, very kind of unexpected way. I've worked solidly for 22 years. And as I said, I've been in learning and development for much of that time. But I don't have university education, and I haven't got the qualifications there. I do have the experience. So in the time that I'm in now, where I'm looking for a role, I've got that kind of capacity that we talked about earlier that I've never had before since I was a teenager. And now I have that capacity to learn. I've kind of trawled the internet for things, hoping that they're free, because I'm not in a financial situation to be able to go away and spend thousands of pounds on learning. So when you kind of get to the nitty gritty of what learning is it that I would like to do, where would I like to take my career next, how much is that going to cost me, and what is the risk involved, I begin to create my own barriers in my head towards learning again, which is something that I've done for my entire life, I think. And as a female, especially a female who absolutely thrives on learning and developing other people as well as myself, having that abundance of learning on the internet and being in a time where I actually need to engage with it and use it has been challenging and scary, if I'm perfectly honest. And so I know that I need to kind of take a risk now and think about how I can progress my career. Interestingly, I have a friend who is similar to myself. She's interested in all of the same things, and she's had time out of her career, and her husband's paid for her to do 3 or 4 courses in the last 12 months, and she's kind of starting to think about getting a new job now. And she's been really fortunate that she's been able to access that learning herself and dabble in things that she's interested in and just enjoy it for what it is. But there's a real fear attached to learning when it's something that you rely on for your livelihood and for your family, and how essential that learning is to progressing your career. And I do think that I've certainly experienced in the roles that I've had in the last 10 years that I've worked with some incredibly privileged people who kind of take that in-house learning experience that we've given for granted. You know, you might stroll into your training course with your coffee and your croissant and think, here I am again. What are we learning this time? And, you know, you've got another trainee in the room who's kind of got the pencil case laid out, the papers are in front of them, and they're desperate to learn, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, you know, thinking, wow, here I am. I'm so lucky to have accessed this learning. And as a trainer, facilitator and coach, it's always interesting to see the dichotomy, if you will, of the students that you have in your classroom, of the people who are desperate to be there, desperate to learn. And often those are women who have waited for years until they've kind of reared the children and are able to leave home, travel to London, for example, and take part in that learning, although the pandemic has changed things and there is a lot more online nowadays. But you know, I've experienced so many women who've come to me at the end of a training session and said, I am so grateful for that. I am so happy to be here. I've waited so long to be able to access this kind of learning. And then, as I say, you've got people who are kind of nonchalantly strolling in and strolling out thinking it's just another course. So I think that it's really interesting what we were talking about. And as I say, you know, with the free online learning, yes, there's some fantastic stuff on there. Often some of that is not something that you can use on your CV to benefit you in your next career move. And that's certainly something that I'm facing at the moment.
Well, I think that there are even courses online, and many of those are free, that are assessments. So they're interests and like a survey of your interest and characteristics to help you work through what your next steps might be. I think that those can be very helpful. I know that when I was in career transition, I found some of those very helpful, and it helped me assess what my next steps might be. And sometimes they can be helpful in helping you shore up areas where you might be weak. And then also they can be helpful for you to say, oh, I didn't realize that I have a real strength in this area. And that might be something I would want to develop further and see how that might lead to a new career opportunity. So that can be an option. You might, not you per se, but one might examine and explore. I've done that myself, and they can be kind of fun because it requires some introspection, and that can be a hard thing to do. To just, think about what do you want, or what are these characteristics about yourself that can open up.
So, Angela, for a woman who has possibly restricted access to learning, what advice would you give?
So here in the U.S., there are, we call them our workforce development offices, and anyone can register with the workforce development. You don't have to be someone who's unemployed to do that. And their teams can generally recommend some training, or you can simply look online to see what courses are being offered in your area or your state. Many of them are online, but many of them are also in person. And so you can work with your coordinator to gain access to those training programs. This is actually how I achieved my project management professional certification, which has been a very valuable asset in my career. And so the state actually paid for that training and even the certification examination. So that training is something that's available to all of the citizens, and it's available to anyone who wants to take it. And there are all sorts of things that are offered. Some technical courses, some things that are, computer training, all sorts of things that can be very valuable in developing your career. So that's one thing that I would recommend. Another thing is to look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and so there are a ton of courses that are available. Not all of that training is available with a basic LinkedIn profile, but if you have a LinkedIn premium account, you can access all of the LinkedIn training that's available. And they have just tons and tons of courses. You can take a photography class. You can learn to play the guitar. You can take public speaking classes, or you can learn about all sorts of courses that would elevate your career. And so that's another place that I would look, because that's very accessible. So if you want, for a female in particular, there are lots and lots of courses available about developing confidence building courses, how to speak in front of people, or help you feel better about how you're engaging with others. And some of those have been very, very helpful for me. So I definitely would recommend LinkedIn training as well.
Yeah, I'd absolutely second that, Angela. LinkedIn has been really invaluable to me, not just now, but throughout the last probably 5 or 6 years now that I've been on there. I think from a UK point of view, and certainly some of the things that I've done to access learning since I've been between roles, is use my network. I was listening to one of Andrew's podcasts. I find Andrew's podcasts themselves a fantastic resource for learning. I was listening to the Changing Careers one, and that itself that offered some fantastic advice. But using your network and your peer-to-peer learning is really invaluable, even if that's a coffee with a friend. You can go away, you can do some learning together, or even podcast with a friend as well. So that's some advice. Register with job sites. Some of the job sites that we have in the UK offer free coaching, which is fantastic. I've accessed that myself. I'm registered with Even Break, which is a job site for people with disabilities. I'm an autistic female, so I'm really fortunate in that I can get some really tailored coaching guiding for autism when it comes to approaching career development and future roles. So that's a really good resource. Always social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. Instagram's been particularly helpful as well, and TikTok, depending on your search criteria, they can be fantastic learning resources, and you can learn from some really inspirational female leaders on Instagram and TikTok. And then I'd say finally, in the UK, gov.uk is a fantastic resource, and you can access some qualifications through the UK government for free that can kind of kickstart. So although they're usually a level 2 level, which is kind of in the UK a GCSE or what you would leave secondary education with, they can be a building block onto further education there. So certainly gov.uk is a fantastic resource too.
Well, Natasha, it has been wonderful to meet you and get to speak with you. If you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I would appreciate that. I would definitely like to connect with you. You can find me under my name, Angela Thurman. Let's definitely connect.
Likewise, Angela, I'd love to connect. You can find me at Natasha Gorman on LinkedIn. It's been a really rich conversation, and I'm really looking forward to keeping up the conversation as we kind of use our networks together to really kind of help ourselves and help other people in similar positions towards gain access to learning and break down those barriers.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
I'm always quick to commend our speakers for stepping up. Being a guest on a podcast can have its challenges, especially if you're new to it, and it takes a great deal of courage to take that first step. We do try and make this experience as easy and as comfortable as possible, and Natasha and Angela were real troopers, and we're sure that you'll learn lots from this episode. We got tons. Both Natasha and Angela were great, and a massive thank you to them for talking about this topic, and also for their time and for being guests on the podcast. I know you want to connect with them afterwards, and their details are in the show notes, along with information about how to connect with us here at Women Talking About Learning. We held a special live recording of Women Talking About Learning a few weeks ago, and it's our next episode. It's the AI one. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.